Hello everyone, my name is AE86. Today I will tell you how to choose the blade and sharpen the blade. Usually we only need two blades to remove the CPU. One is blade number 11 to remove resin from the edge. The other is a soft blade to pry off the CPU. There are also two types of soft blades. One is narrow blade head. The other head of the blade is relatively wider and smoother. Okay, now we start to polish the blade to remove the resin from the edge. Let's take a look under the microscope. This is the original blade without any processing. So when we remove the glue from the edge with these blades, we can notice that the walls of this knife, when used for some edge glue, when the CPU is very high and very narrow, so the wall thickness of the blade will block the gap between the CPU and the resistor or capacitor. So the first step is to make this thickness thinner. The other is that this knife is very sharp, very sharp. If you push the motherboard forward this way, it is easy to leave scratches by pushing too hard. It is not easy to work like this. So how do we deal with this knife? We use sandpaper. Here I have prepared 3 different sandpaper. They are 800 CW, 1200 CW, and 1500 CW coarse sandpaper. The steps are divided into grinding, fine grinding, and finally super fine grinding. First, we thin the blade. We try to push back and forth like this. We observe its thickness while sanding. We take a piece of sandpaper and wipe the dust from the surface. Okay, let's switch to 100 2000 CW sandpaper for the second fine polishing step. So we need to passivate its tip. We push forward with this diagonal grip, slide back and rub several times. Then we sand a few times like this. Okay, we take out the 100 500 CW sandpaper we prepare for ultra fine polishing. We pay attention to the tip of the tool. Still very sharp. You have to polish it into an arc. Originally it was a straight line, but now it has an angle. We take advantage of this angle. We will polish the side. Do not sand the knife too much. Okay, we clean it. After sanding the knife, let's test it on the stencil. If it is not very smooth and has resistance, we continue sanding. They can look at the microscope camera. We can handle it with our normal grip, the most comfortable. After finding the position, there will be no scratches on the tip of the knife. It is almost finished. We are looking for a motherboard. We look for the angle and adjust the grip. At this time, even if you apply a little force on the PCB, it will not peel off the paint or leave scratches. You can see that my angle is slightly tilted at the moment. We process the tip of the knife a little. They can sometimes find very deep ICs. So let's deal with the tip. Later, we will see the situation of the knife blade processing. At this time, I will continue showing the process. A new knife blade will definitely leave scratches if it gets scratched on the motherboard. We can find a new blade to compare. What is the difference between the sanded blade and a new one? Let's observe. You can see that the original blade is very sharp, straight and pointed. Because our grip is 45 degrees or less, so we have to create a slope. This way you won't scratch the motherboard. And we dull this one. You can see that the tip of the knife is very dull. But the rear is still very sharp. Our resin removal knife does not need to be so sharp. So this blade, the more blunt it is, the better. The longer you use it, the more comfortable it will be. So this resin extraction knife is basically complete. If you find a more expensive phone, your IC and resistor or capacitor will be closer, especially Apple. Android is a bit better, but some high-end devices are like this too. Then we demonstrate. You can clearly see the gap between the back of the knife and the CPU, capacitor and resistor. when the gap is great. Now we have reduced the thickness of the blade. In fact, the original knife blade is thicker. If you accidentally touch the capacitors when removing the glue from the edge, it will cause a short circuit. The chip disassembly process will cause a man-made failure, which will cause inaccurate judgment of the mobile phone failure and cause a secondary failure. This is the reason why we want to align the blade. We build a good knife to remove resin. As our motherboard repair, it will not cause secondary failure. In this way, our resin extraction knife is complete. I will continue to explain where the other knives are used. Basically, this knife when buying 1500 sandpaper is used. We just sand the areas of the front end that comes into contact with the chip to make them a little rounder, a little oblique. It is originally flat, about 90 degrees around. It needs to be sharpened as I am doing. Let's zoom in and observe. We can see that it has become more rounded. It is not that easy to scratch the chip like that. This type of blade does not need to be as complicated as resin knives. A simple treatment is fine. So let's take a look. This is a very strong and thin blade. When we buy it, we sand it a bit. Let's talk about the use of this blade. This blade is generally a soft knife that is used from the upper RAM and the lowest layer of the CPU. Use it to separate the dual layer CPU. Because the gap between the dual layer CPU is very small. It is very suitable for cutting from the position of this space. Because CPUs are currently built very thin. It will be easily damaged if we pry hard. Then we use a soft knife to insert gently using a flat push. And the advantage of the soft knife is that we can feel the melting degree of the tin point. Tin, if it does not melt, cannot be pushed, but it will advance easily if it melts. Then it is used to disassemble the dual-layer CPU. Often when the eMMC is lowered, it is not very comfortable. Why is this so? First, there is a protective cover. Use a soft knife to remove the protective cover. So sometimes when disassembling the eMMC for beauty, we can choose the narrowest blade. We can gently introduce from here. On the timing of eMMC extraction, our knife is based on the degrees of melting of the tin. It is not to force it in. Does not force it too much. This type of eMMC is especially thin when it becomes to UFS 3.0. We use this soft knife to insert it. Because this type of harder blade will be softer if it is thinner. This type of blade disassembles all machines or when there are not other components nearby or also NAND. When we use it for that, it will be very suitable. But now the protectors of many motherboards are very accurate. For the sake of beauty, we don't remove the shell. But when it is convenient to cut the shell, it will be better to cut it. Because although the solution is not pretty, it will not cause damage to the chips. If you are looking for beauty, choose the right blade. It is very dangerous if you pry directly like this with a knife. It is easy to break the eMMC, especially when it comes to thin chips. The leveraging will easily deform and break. This situation is often found in UFS 3.0. We generally use a soft knife for thinner components. After the tin melts, we introduce flat. In this way, the chip will not be damaged. So this is how we choose this knife for different cases. The above is the introductory knowledge point of this lesson.